Hello and welcome back if you were with us earlier as you join us at the Royal Albert Hall for the second half of the last night of this year's Henry Wood Promenade Concerts, the grand finale to 2 months of music making which has drawn many capacity audiences to this hall. But of course, the last night has a party atmosphere which is all its own, and during the intervals, the bottles have come out in the boxes, though they're not all champagne Charlies, and the party hats and the streamers, and everyone's been getting into the mood for the final jollification. But the traditional sing-along doesn't start quite yet, and I'll tell you in a moment about the other items in the programme. But first, let me offer an additional word of welcome to an audience which extends right across the world. Listeners to the World Service of the BBC and television viewers in Japan, who this year are joining viewers in West Germany, Sweden, Belgium, Finland and Israel for this uniquely British musical occasion. Well, of course, one of the great attractions of the evening is to hear everyone joining in those British community songs, Land of Hope and Glory, Rule Britannia and Jerusalem. Some of the words may be dated, perhaps, but that doesn't stop them being great songs to sing. Before we get to that point, we'll hear an overture and an aria by Rossini, a lovely work by Delius, A Song of Summer, and a duet from the opera Lakme by Delibes, which has become very familiar thanks to an airline commercial on television. This will be sung by Lesley, Garrett and Anne Murray, who will jointly lead the singing later on in a new adaptation of Rule Britannia, but more of that later on. No doubt during much of the proceedings it's the promenaders who will find themselves in the limelight. As usual, they've clubbed together to present all the performers with carnations, and they'll be making a record donation of £4,300 at the last count to musical and cancer charities. Now, as always, some of them are queued up for days, or rather nights, on the pavement outside, but that's just for the privilege of getting near the front with all their treasured mascots. The first in the queue arrived 12 nights ago, and by Thursday there were 40 or more on the pavement, all getting on well, all of many different nationalities, and all as happy as they could be this evening. They've all had tickets for some time, some are season ticket holders, and for the rest, there's a rule that you have to attend 5 concerts before you can apply for a last night ticket. So they're not people who just come for the fun and games and for nothing else. This season, there's been an amazing variety of music to choose from in the season as a whole, and some of the more adventurous programs, in fact, have been among the best attended. Very much an international festival these days. Quite apart from solo performers of international renown, there have been orchestras from America and Russia, Holland, Sweden, Italy and Japan, the extraordinary Cytokinin Orchestra. And this evening, as always on the last night, it's the BBC Symphony Orchestra which occupies the platform. They'll be conducted by their chief conductor, Andrew Davis, who replaces Mark Elder. To reinforce the singing of the audience, we have the BBC Singers and the BBC Symphony Chorus, with Alan Harbison contributing to the joyful noise on the Albert Hall organ. Close up of the bust of Sir Henry Wood, awaiting adornment at the back of the hall. A few balloons and streamers flying. Always just a slightly perilous moment for the orchestra. And the sub-leader is trying to get a little bit of attention so that they can tune. That's always a bit of a problem too. Family greetings in the audience. Hello, Mum. Hello, Nan. Whoever they are. Hello. Hope you're listening. Hope you're enjoying it. Quite a few Union Jacks, but a lot of other flags too around the hall today. It's become quite an international occasion with all the television and radio audiences across the world. Here's Bela Decany, the leader. And it's time now for that traditional moment when the bust of Sir Henry Wood is adorned with a chaplet, as they call it, founding father of the Proms, The Robert Alderman from Finchley works in a bank, and Andrew Mills, who's an actuary when he's not at the Proms. They give the top of his head, the top of Sir Henry's head, that is, a little bit of a polish, and on goes the chaplet. This part of the concert's going to begin with that well-tried war horse, the Overture to William Tell by Rossini. In fact, for many people, the final gallop is very much associated with a horse and the Lone Ranger who sits in the saddle in the famous television series. The opera itself is a serious one, of course, about the struggle of Switzerland for liberty in the 13th century. But the overture is thoroughly enjoyable music by a man who enjoyed himself. He once said, "Eating, loving, singing and digesting in that order are the 4 acts of the comic opera of life. They pass like the bubbles of a bottle of champagne. Whoever lets them break without enjoying them is a complete fool," which is a perfect motto for this last night party at the Proms. And here's Andrew Davis, the chief conductor of the BBC Symphony Orchestra, to conduct the Overture to William Tell by Rossini. We're going to have an aria from another opera by Rossini, La Cenerentola, in a moment, which is more or less based on the Cinderella story. Rossini was supposed to produce a Christmas opera for Rome in 1816, but 2 days before Christmas, the libretto hadn't even been chosen. When Rossini finally started, he completed the work in 24 days. Wasn't a great success at first, but Rossini predicted that soon impresarios would be fighting over it, and so would prima donnas. And so indeed it has proved. We shall hear our prima donna, Anne Murray, singing Non più mesta, No More Grief. In it, Cinderella, with approving comments from the chorus, forgives absolutely everyone, and the opera ends happily ever after. Anne Murray, in fact, made her debut in this opera at La Scala Milan in 1982, in a production by Jean-Pierre Ponel. And she subsequently starred in Michael Hamper's production at Salzburg. So this music is indeed very familiar to her. And here they come. The world-famous Irish mezzo-soprano Anne Murray, wearing a diamante green dress. And we have Non più mesta from La Cenerentola by Rossini. That's how to bring the house down, whether in the Opera House or the Royal Albert Hall. Anne Murray singing the final aria from La Cenerentola, Cinderella by Rossini. Here she comes again. Not by any means the last we've seen of her this evening, fortunately. Next year, she will play a great part in the events to mark the bicentenary of Mozart's death, appearing in operas at the Vienna Festival, Munich, at Salzburg, at Covent Garden. Meanwhile, it's a very great pleasure for us to have her here at the last night of the Proms. Before the traditional finale, we have one quieter episode as a rule, and this year the choice has fallen upon an orchestral composition by Delius, first performed at the Proms under Sir Henry Wood in September 1931. Known to us in its finished form as a Song of Summer, it started life in 1918 as an orchestral piece which was never finished, called A Poem of Life and Love. The fact that it was completed at all owes much to Eric Fenby, who helped the blind and paralyzed composer to realize his intentions in the most amazing fashion. Referring to the opening passage of this very gentle music, Delius told Fenby, "I want you to imagine that we're sitting on the cliffs in the heather, looking out over the sea. The sustained chords in the high strings suggest the clear sky and the stillness and the calm of the scene," which is perhaps a little removed from the scene tonight. Sir Thomas Beecham said that this piece was completed thanks to the iron resolution of one man and the almost angelic patience of another. In that way, the incredible task was accomplished. Here now is Andrew Davis to conduct A Song of Summer by Delius, if he can win the necessary calm. In a few minutes we shall have that potent reminder of Britain's imperial past, land of hope and glory. But before that we have a rather different reminder of the days of the Raj. A duet from the opera Lakme by Delibes, which is set in British India and concerns the ill-starred love of a British officer for the daughter of a Brahmin high priest. In the first act, Lakme and her attendant Malika sing a lovely duet as they go to bathe in a stream, referring to the thick canopy of forest leaves which shelters them from the sun. I hope you could hear what I was saying. A bit of competition from down there. Because this lovely duet is very familiar from a television commercial for a certain airline. So you may know it in another context altogether. Great range of people here at this concert. Lots of very young people sitting in the boxes and in other parts of the hall. No doubt a great treat for them to come to the last night of the Proms. And Anne Murray is joined by the soprano Lesley Garrett in this lovely duet. Lesley Garrett wearing a gold dress to complement the green dress of Anne Murray. And Lesley is making her prom debut as a singer, although in fact she introduced one of the proms for television earlier this season.
Le
Garrett and Anne Murray in the delightful duet from Lakme by Delibes, Sous le dôme épais, under the thick canopy. There they both come, followed by bouquets, although it's not the last time we shall see them. We'll hear them a bit later on in Rule Britannia. The last round-up of the 1990 Proms is due to begin in a moment with the Pomp and Circumstance March number 1 by Elgar. In the tune for the trio, Elgar knew he'd written a winner. When Henry Wood introduced the piece at the Queen's Hall in 1901, he had to play it 3 times. It was the only time that ever occurred in the course of his conducting of the Proms. And when the tune was first sung by the audience at the Proms with A.C. Benson's words, I'm not sure, but it was certainly done in that form on the last night of the Proms in 1914, the year the First World War broke out. Since then, the imperial claims of the words have long since receded into history, but that great tune is just as good as ever. Here's Andrew Davis, the conductor.
Oh, you want another go at that? Yes.
The Midland of Open Glory and the Sea Songs Fantasia, but eventually they've been restored by popular demand. That happened as long ago as the early 50s, when Sir Malcolm Sargent thought the Sea Songs outdated and decided to replace them with his own arrangement of Rule Britannia and Jerusalem. In the end, pressure from the promenaders forced him to include the Sea Songs as an encore, which was not broadcast. Well, tonight we shall broadcast the usual version of the Fantasia on British Sea Songs by Sir Henry Wood, followed by Rule Britannia in a new adaptation of Sir Malcolm Sargent's arrangement, with two solo singers, Lesley, Garrett and Anne Murray. Both of them are highly expert in music of this period, and I think we can expect some extraordinary vocal fireworks from them. Here they come. And a surprise soloist too, Hakan Hardenberger, the Swedish trumpeter who played the trumpet concerto of Haydn in the first half, has come onto the platform. He too is obviously going to join in Rule Britannia. Sir Henry Wood used to like to try and defeat the promenaders with that piece, and I think Andrew Davis has the same sort of relish. Going to try again. Well, in the first half we had a blessed pair of sirens. Now we have a blessed pair of Britannias, and immensely effective it was. Lesley, Garrett and Anne Murray, and everybody enjoying it hugely. With Hakan Hardenberger providing a little trumpet obbligato. Some of the soloists in the orchestra will get a chance now, I think, to take a call. The euphonium soloist, Stephen Cooper. The cellist, Tim Hugh. The leader of the orchestra, Bella Decany. And the flute player, I expect, David Butt, for their part in the hornpipe. Trombone section, of course, had a big part to play, led by Christopher Mower. Oh, Colin Bradbury, the clarinetist, first. The trombonists sit down. And, of course, the oboist, David Theodore. And there are presentations now coming down for the conductor and the soloists. Marjorie Dawson, the secretary from North London, presents Andrew Davis with a bottle of vintage port. I happen to know that. Leslie Scott, another secretary, presents Anne Murray with another bouquet. Emily Norton, similar presentation to Lesley Garrett. And Hakan Hardenberger receives a gift from Elizabeth Richards of Aylesbury. He's got cufflinks and a tie pin. In a few moments we shall have Paris Jerusalem, but first, alas, for Andrew Davis, he has to face the ordeal of the last night's speech.
Great. Don't think I need to open this yet. I should tell you that the promenaders, of course, whose generosity we've all just benefited from, and thank you all very much, it's very much appreciated. What's not always so well known is that they raise money every year which do two things. First of all, they buy these beautiful boutonnières. for all our slot back here. But the rest of the money they raise goes to charity. This year it's going to the Malcolm Sargent Cancer Fund for Children, the Musicians Benevolent Fund, and Imperial Cancer Research, all, of course, wonderfully deserving causes. And they've raised a record amount of money this year. Great. Yeah, they've raised a record amount this year, which is £4,300. Bravo. Well, here we are, almost at the end of another season of the Proms. And as always... and as always, the bust of Sir Henry presides benignly over the proceedings. And you know, even after all these years, we still do owe him an enormous debt of gratitude simply for having the wonderful visionary idea of a festival of summer concerts, a festival that has endured for so very long and has brought so much pleasure to literally millions of people. So let's have a rousing cheer for Old Timber. Now I just have to get through a few statistics. They're quite interesting, really. This year's season has seen 66 concerts given by 28 orchestras and 5 other ensembles, including, as a rather splendid first, an outdoor concert performance by the London All-Stars Steel Band. There. 11 of these concerts, by the way, were given by 7 different foreign orchestras, and we've also seen the participation of 18 different choirs, and of course a galaxy of soloists, 3 of the most stellar of whom are of course with me here on the platform tonight. I should also like us to recognize tonight the contribution made during the whole season by these 2 very distinguished choral groups behind me, the BBC Singers, who've rather an unimpressive plaque, really. They've taken part in 4 concerts, and especially noteworthy, I think, were the absolutely beautiful a cappella performances they gave of works by Brahms, Strauss, and Schoenberg. And then the BBC Symphony Chorus, who've taken part in 6 concerts, and I should say they've given up a great deal of their precious summertime, at a time of year when most of us really want to do nothing but relax and enjoy our families. So I would ask both groups to take a bow. The various BBC orchestras, of course, take on the lion's share of the Proms. The concert orchestra this year gave 2 concerts, the Welsh and the Scottish Symphony Orchestras 3 each, and the BBC Philharmonic 4. But it is the illustrious musicians behind me here to whom the greatest thanks are due. Wonderful, wonderful group of men and women who have performed 16 concerts in this year's Proms, and I must say who bring to their art tremendous enthusiasm and dedication. I can tell you that working with them is unalloyed pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen. And I should add that the coming winter season marks the orchestra's 60th anniversary. It's been an extraordinary experience for me to look through the archives and see the enormous number of 20th century masterpieces that were given either their British or indeed their world premieres by the orchestra. And a lot of the programs that we'll be doing this year will be dedicated to the reliving of this impressive history. And I hope that many of you will be able to join us in what I think will be an especially important and stimulating season. Finally this evening, I'd like to pay tribute to the remarkable man who was my predecessor as chief conductor of the BBC Symphony Orchestra, Sir John Pritchard. Last year's Last Night was, of course, his final appearance in this country, and the way in which his irrepressible spirit triumphed over his already very serious illness on that occasion was very moving. You will recall that this year our opening performance of Mahler's Great Resurrection Symphony was dedicated to his memory, and it had been intended to show on television immediately before the performance a short sequence of interviews by Richard Baker with some of his friends and colleagues, interspersed with clips from some of his performances. This, unfortunately, had to be abandoned since the start of the concert had already been delayed 20 minutes by the overrunning of the cricket. And we thought we should start the concert, particularly as the temperature, as you may recall, was somewhat over 100 degrees in here at the time. Briefly, then, I'd like to redress this omission. The achievements of Sir John, or JP as he was always affectionately known, are very impressive. In this country, at various times, he was conductor of the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra, the London Philharmonic, and of course the BBC Symphony Orchestra, as well as being musical director at Glyndebourne. Abroad, he headed the opera houses in Cologne, Brussels, and San Francisco, as well as being constantly in demand with many other opera houses and orchestras all over the world. Those of us who were privileged to work with him understood why. He drew from orchestras a very special sound, most notable perhaps for its clarity and its lightness. The music with him always glowed. For singers, he was a singer's conductor. His understanding and sensitivity to their needs, his ability to breathe with them, always gave them a sense of great support and confidence. He was tremendously encouraging also to younger artists, as I can myself testify. And above all, with his wit, his charm, and his boundless enjoyment of all the good things that life has to offer, he imparted to his music making a unique sense of the wondrousness, the miraculousness of it all.
Great hymn of hope and good intent to bring this promenade concert season to an end. Handshake for Bella Decany from Andrew Davies. So it's all over for another year. It's been a marvellous evening in the hall tonight, and we hope that you've been able to share the feeling of it all with us. Indeed, it's been a marvellous promenade concert season as a whole. And as the cheering continues, all that remains for me to say is good night to you from a very happy Royal Albert Hall.